Hey, what's up YouTube? So yesterday we got the full ultimatum patch notes, and in this patch notes it was pretty much all nerfs. And pretty much every build in the game got nerfed in a way, either through the removal of harvest or the removal of the explode chests. And a lot of builds that also use cluster jewels, as you can see down here, got changed. Oh, it didn't show up, but yeah, skills like brand lost their attachment range, and there's a lot of cluster jewel changes, and these cluster jewel changes actually end up affecting the aura stackers. Now, in this patch, there were both nerfs and buffs, but the nerfs definitely outweigh the buffs in the end. And I'll go over the buffs first, and I'll go over the nerfs, and then I'll go over how this all affects the aura stacker and what we should do to build our character differently in order to take advantage of these changes. So now we're going to get started with the buff. So the first buff we have is the new blood magic gem, which has been split into two. And this is the first component, which is called the arrogance support gem. And this gem is notable because it gives us increased aura effect, and it has a lower multiplier than blood magic starts with. Blood magic starts at 245%. Now, we don't really know how this gem will scale with levels, so this might go to 10%, it might go to 20%, it might go to 30%, and this percentage might go down below blood magic to 160 to 175%. So overall, this is just a straight buff to the aura stacker, and hopefully this offsets some of the nerfs that are upcoming. Now, the second buff we have is a small quality of life change, but I just wanted to mention it because it actually was really annoying last league without this. So reserving mana or life no longer involves spending anything, and this pretty much just means that you can play around with what auras are where, like what is linked to what, without having to like zone out of your hideout to go to town in order to refresh your life or mana. Because it was really annoying to do that, especially when you're trying to figure out which aura you should blood magic. So this should allow us to do that a lot easier. This is not really a buff, but just a small quality of life change I wanted to talk about because I think it kind of goes overlooked in this sea of text. Now, the last buff we have is pretty small, and it says that percentage reservations are now stored with more precision internally. And this pretty much means that now when we got like a mana reserve, like we get 1% RMR, right? 1% reduced reservation, you would see that some of the auras just wouldn't change in cost, like heralds. And this is because it rounds up. So if your aura reservation for an aura goes from 50 to 49.5%, before it would just round up to 50%. So now say like player of 1000 mana, you would reserve 495. So now before you would still reserve 500, but now you'll reserve 495. This is a slight buff again to how much mana we'll reserve. And I think this, like, even though it seems really small, it will add up, and it will probably much come out to like a 1 RMR jewel. Okay, we have one last buff, and it is to Vaal Arc. Now, Vaal Arc, or Arc, will probably be our league starter of choice when we first swap to the aura stacker because it doesn't require malevolence. And now the soul gain prevention duration is only 2 seconds instead of 6. And this is pretty big because Vaal Arc is really good for clearing Legion, and this means we might be able to use Vaal Arc twice in a Legion. And Vaal Arc's buff for lucky damage is quite underrated. Because what it means is... So let's see, does it say here? Wait, it doesn't say lucky duration anymore? I thought the Vaal Arc used to give lucky duration. Oh, it says now causes your arc damage to be lucky for 4 seconds. I mean, that should still be in the game, I think. But regardless, the lucky aspect makes it so that our lightning damage rolls twice, so that during that time our DPS is actually a lot higher than what the tooltip shows, and it's pretty big that we have a higher uptime on that. Now we get into the bad part about the patch notes for us, the medium cluster jewel balancing. So the medium cluster jewel notables for a lot of builds overall got changed. You can see brand attachment range, increased effect of curse, but only the notables got changed. So the travel nodes are still 3%. And the important notables for us are replenishing presence and first among equals are now 6% instead of 8%. And that means in a 4 large cluster build, you'll have 8 medium clusters. That means we'll lose 8 times 4 is 32%, but then we have 2 purposeful harbinger nodes, so that will subtract 4%, so we'll lose 28% aura effectiveness overall if we use the 4 large cluster setup. And if we use the normal voices with 9 medium clusters, we lose 32% aura effectiveness total. So overall, this is a pretty substantial nerf to our damage, and it might make it a lot harder to hit certain breakpoints. It also means that hitting 400% will become almost impossible. Now, the next nerf we have is the large cluster jewel notable nerf. So some of the large cluster jewels were also too strong, the notables. So Vengeful Commander has been nerfed again, and it's at 15% instead of 20%. I think this thing has been nerfed all the way down from like 25 or 30%. And Snowstorm, which is another one we use. So our large clusters usually are Vengeful Commander or Snowstorm. And now it causes us to gain 8% of lightning damage as extra cold damage instead of 10. Now this might mean that Blanketed Snow will be a better choice than Snowstorm. But overall, this means that large cluster jewels will probably be a lot worse than voices, especially with the combined nerf of medium clusters and large clusters. It'll make it really hard to actually reach like certain breakpoints with large clusters without being extremely high level. So now I'll go over some pobs real fast to show you like how big the nerf actually is in terms of how this will look like. So here is a EK build with 80 mil roughly, and this is with what's it called, large clusters. So normally, okay, so here we have Commanding Presence. So this guy's using a Glorious Vanity. So this is approximately 30%. So he has 98 million damage, and after taking out these two nodes for the aura effectiveness, he goes to 80 mil. So he loses roughly like 20% of his damage, and that's before like Snowstorm gets factored in. So you can pretty much, let's just do it like this. Actually, how do I need to make a new large cluster. So here we can just take this large cluster, Eagle Cut. So let's make, so how, this is how you can check it out. So basically we edit one of these large clusters to just delete Vengeful Commander Snowstorm, because that's about how much the nerf comes out to be. So we save it, and now you see it's at 73 mil. So it goes from almost 100 mil to 73 mil. So that's around like a 25 to 30% nerf for a large cluster setup. Now here we have a voices setup. There's 9 clusters with Spark. So the damage is 117 mil or 120 mil approximately. So we can do the same thing. So we remove 30% away from it. And you can see that the damage goes to 94 mil. So because this build uses no large cluster, the overall loss and damage is around 15 to 20%. So this shows you that the large cluster setup is a lot worse now than voices by a factor of like 10 to 15%, depending on how you look at it and how you build it. So overall, this means that voices late game will be the best setup for sure. And it also means that late game, because of the nerfs, this also means that these cluster jewels that I'm going to be showing you here will have a lot more impact and be a lot better. So these are the old school ones that we used to use before the changes, and these are 6 passive point level 84 aura clusters, and you get 35% increased effect and 12 maximum ES. And the only difference between this and the replenishing and first among is only 1% aura effect. So that means we'll be a lot tankier because we'll be forced to do this in late game, because the difference is minimal in terms of aura effect, but the survivability difference is huge. So that means the build fully optimized now at late game with voices and these jewels will be a lot tankier. Like you see, this person has 11k ES nearly, but obviously this is going to be a very expensive setup, and these jewels will probably get a lot more expensive, the I-84 ones. But if you start this build off early, I'm pretty sure that these jewels will be a lot more affordable until people realize that these jewels will be the new chase items. So the build overall ceiling in terms of cost will be a lot more because of that. Now overall, what do I think about like how this build is? Like Aura Stacker is still without a doubt the strongest build in the game overall for doing all types of content once you fully gear it out. the amount of nerfs that this build received is tiny compared to the other builds, the most meta builds out there. Like in stacking Wanderer, even though it didn't get touched directly in the patch notes, lost harvest crafts, and harvest crafting was a huge portion of a lot of their items, like their gloves, for instance. And this nerf was honestly not that big, and even now, I don't have the arrogance blood magic gem that I have, that we'll be receiving. So some of this nerf will be offset in terms of that. Now for that gem, we will probably want to put it on our damage auras, and then our purities, so we don't have 90% res. But overall, I'll possibly be league starting as a Bladefall Blade Blast, and I'll be making a guide about it, a YouTube guide. I just wanted to get a more updated pod before I release it. But I'm probably going to be doing Archmage, Bladefall, Blade Blast Ascendant into Aura Stacker immediately, so it'll be fun. I'll make a build diary too every day during the league of my upgrades and how I'm progressing my character and account. But anyhow, everyone, thanks for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe and check out my Twitch channel and join the Discord. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. And good luck.